Hello and welcome back for another presentation in your World Regional Geography course. This time we're going to introduce the realm of Southeast Asia. So let's begin. Southeast Asia is the region between China, India, Australia, and the Pacific Ocean. Southeast Asia includes countries with political boundaries creating new shapes and sizes. The political borders were created through a combination of factors including natural features, traditional tribal distinctions, colonial claims, and political agreements. The realm also has the fourth most populous country in the world, being Indonesia. And so I selected this map here on the right-hand side to just kind of put in that perspective of what's considered the mainland and the insular region. And as you can see, the insular region is most of what we'll be speaking of in this presentation. Now, Southeast Asia has not escaped the impact of globalization. The only area of region that was not colonized by Europeans was Thailand, which at that point was called Siam. It remained an independent kingdom throughout the colonial period and was a buffer state between French and British colonizers. The Japanese colonial empire controlled much of the southeast before World War II. The physical geography of the mainland and the insular region is dominated by tropical A climates. Cooler temperatures may be found in the mountainous regions, and even more temperate ranges can be found along the coast. Tectonic plate activity is responsible for many of the earthquakes and the volcanic eruptions that occur within the realm. So again, going with our classic dot density map, and then also looking at a raised relief. I couldn't find a really good dot density that had both mainland and the insular islands, but nonetheless we can really see the patterns. So we certainly know that a majority of these environments, as we'll continue to speak to, are volcanic based. And that being said, since we've got all these different accumulations of islands, we'll learn a little bit about the resources that are prominent in those landscapes. But again, we can certainly see that there is population densities farther on the western ridge. And when we start discussing about things like that in the text and throughout the course, think about why. When it comes to trade, when it comes to transport, when it comes to export of goods and things like that. Those are really great things to take into consideration. But again, do we see a relationship with topography and the landscape when looking at population density? So let's talk about the mainland first. So now France colonized Vietnam. It imposed the French language as the lingua franca and Christianity as the main religion. Both changes met resistance, but religious persecution of Buddhism by the French colonizers created harsh adversarial conditions within the culture. The French domination started in 1858. The Japanese replaced it in 1940, and this lasts until the end of World War II. With the defeat of Japan in 1945, the French desired to regain control of Vietnam. The French aggressively pushed into the country, but met serious resistance and were finally defeated in 1954. Now, not wishing Vietnam and its neighbors to go communist through a domino effect, where if one country fell into communism, its neighborhoods would follow, President Johnson decided to escalate the war in Vietnam, and by 1965, more than 1.5 million U.S. soldiers were in the ground in Vietnam. Now, in Cambodia, France took control of the region in the latter part of the 17th century. Japan took control right before World War II and then relinquished it when they surrendered at the end of World War II. France regained control of Cambodia after Japanese army was defeated, and Cambodia finally received independence by France in 1953. And what I did here is I wanted to select two really interesting images, one from Cambodia and one from Thailand, and these are both of temples of that realm. And I just thought that was really interesting when looking at that. I don't know, I guess when I look at architecture and stuff like this, I'm looking at the cultural perspective, the time, the era in which it would have been built, and also just think about the economics. So moving forward, Thailand was formerly known as the Kingdom of Siam. In 1932, a constitutional monarchy was established after a bloodless revolution erupted in the country. The name was officially changed to Thailand in 1939. The ruling monarch remains head of state, but a prime minister is head of the government. Siam was never colonized by either the Europeans or Japanese. Now introducing the insular region, a little bit different than the mainland, because now we're looking specifically at these larger islands, which I mentioned before were really established because of its volcanics. So the insular region of Southeast Asia includes countries of Malaysia, Singapore, Brunei, East Timor, Indonesia, and the Philippines. Now, Malaysia is a country made up of various British colonies that came together as a federation and then became an independent country. Britain started establishing colonies in this region in the late 1700s. The former British Protectorate of Brunei is today a major oil and natural gas exporter. It provides a high standard of living for its very small population. Under British colonial rule, the island of Singapore was included in the Malaysian Federation. It broke away and became independent in 1965. It is a small island measuring only 30 miles long at its widest point. The country of Indonesia is the world's largest archipelago state, consisting of more than 17,500 islands, about of which 1/3 are inhabited. Indonesia is the 16th largest country in the world by area. Now, located on the eastern side of the Southeast Asian community is the state of the Philippines, with more than 7,100 islands, many of which are volcanic peaks, and an expanse and coastal waterways. The Philippines is home to more than 90 million people in a combined land area equivalent to that of Arizona in the United States. So again, when we started speaking earlier on in this presentation, looking at locations, exports, transportation, where are people living, where are those routes in play. Also, just when you think about more recently, what's really kind of picking up in this area, aside from natural exports of oil and gas, technology, but also tourism. Ecotourism is really starting to pick up in these areas, specifically in Thailand. And perhaps you've seen on the Travel Channel some of those locations which people like to travel to. All right, in our final slide, let's test it. Again, I gave you 4 questions that deal with not just the presentation, but the reading within the course, and you will see these questions on your exam. So let's get going. Question 1, what region of Southeast Asia was not colonized by France and Britain? Question number 2, Vietnam was divided by a communist north and capitalist south during which war? Question 3, which region's population is the most prominent in Indonesia? Question 4, what type of production has been Singapore's main method of wealth? Don't forget to like this video, comment if you got a question below, and let's get going with these answers. Question number 1, what region of Southeast Asia was not colonized by France and Britain? It would have been Siam, otherwise known as Thailand. Question 2, Vietnam was divided by a communist north and capitalist south during the Cold War. And question 3, which region's population is most prominent in Indonesia? It would be Muslim. And question 4, what type of production has been Singapore's main method for wealth? And that would be high tech. Again, I hope this is helpful. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll talk soon.